podcast listeners, if you hear my voice right now, I need you to do something for me. I want you to take out your phone or on your computer, go to Apple Podcasts, search for Ask Your Oldhead podcast. You'll see my logo, my little picture, my little image there. Find the show. Please rate and write a review. It's a small thing, but it helps others find this work and find what I'm doing here. And it really, really matters, as small as that may seem. So if you could please do that before we get into the show, I would much appreciate it. Thank you for listening. Let's get into it. Peace. Peace. I'm Majestic.
My brother, Justice Rajee.
So, since the last time we talked, something occurred. Mike Tyson, former heavyweight champ of the world. I would say definitely the defining, I feel safe to say the defining heavyweight boxer of our youth, right? Like the boxer who, like everything else, sort of pivoted off of Tyson, I think. And I would say a part of really the last age of like the great heavyweight boxers, right? And just the space that heavyweight boxers used to hold in the culture. You know what I mean? Like they don't hold what they used to hold. Like people, I don't know if people who, especially younger folks, but I think in general folks don't remember what it was like, when they're like, oh man, it's a heavyweight fight this weekend. And like even people who were super casual would maybe, especially at the advent of pay-per-view, but even before, would be aware that it was a thing that was happening, where I would say that's not the case these times. And I don't think, I know there's people that are super into UFC and I dig it every once in a while, but I don't think that form of fighting in combat sports have replaced the way boxing used to fit in the space and on the shelf. So, and I start with Mike Tyson because he's the important part to me in this conversation overall, although I'm going to try to be, I don't know I'm going to try to be, but I'm going to try to be positive about the other. He fought the dude,
right on,
Paul,
brother, right on.
who's like I think they used to make like pranky, goofy internet, like YouTube videos.
He started like on Disney. Yeah.
Was he on Disney too? Because I don't I just remember that he became like famous from the YouTube channel, but I guess that's right. I guess they were on Disney. And this has been in a series, and we've discussed the Jake Paul fighting stuff, I think at least tangentially. Maybe I didn't actually get to go double check. Because at this point he has made basically a space in the macro society, in the larger sports entertainment world by basically fighting old boxers and other athletes who want to box. He did fight one or two, I think, like actual, at least somewhere ranked or professional boxers, like Tyson Fury's little brother or something. Apparently, I didn't know that happened because I don't pay attention to Jake Paul. But the wild thing about it was, and I'm going to try to be reserved because we shared a perspective on it that I thought was more useful than my just kind of like rank distaste and disgust with the whole thing, which I will share before our conversation ends. But this show is not this conversation when we talk. It's not just old man ranting, shaking his fist angry at the sky. You know what I'm saying? Like it is also about like, I want the world to have some perspective and some thought and chew on things, right? Like I don't want to just be like, oh, Justice about to be mad about something. Let's see what he's mad about now. So before I get to my rank discussion and distaste for the whole affair, I wanted to get your thought because there was like watching it, and I'll add on because there was a lot of things like while it was happening that really rung true with where you had shared. So with that, I'm a chest pass and say, what's your first thought on the situation?
Yeah. So real quick, and thank you. Well, so one, what you just said brought something to the table to me, which is when we were coming up, you had middleweights, lightweights, cruiserweights. I don't think people even say cruiserweight anymore, right? I don't know if they condensed it or what they did with it, right?
Right.
Like but you could watch boxing on Worldwide of Sports, right, on ABC, and it would just be boxing, like
Right.
quality boxing at like quality boxing at 2:00 in the afternoon, right before bowling, right after parasailing or something, right? Like, I mean, just as a quick aside, the idea of the ABC being like, "Yo, we're going to show 5 different sports over like 3 hours."
Yeah. It's just
Because it never happened today, right? Like
it's
that
crazy.
idea.
It's a whole thing. Like I really don't think folks realize like the even with all the various choice that you have now of sports networks, which is a lot out there. But it would be like, yo, and today we got the IB whatever welterweight
Yeah, the
fight,
IBF
you
champ,
know,
the IBF Cruiserweight
someone's
Championship.
you know what I'm saying? And then we're gonna have, you know what I'm saying, and then we're going to, you know what I'm saying, table tennis. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
or some other just other sport like speed boats.
And you would just watch them all during the afternoon, right? Like, so I mean, so that was so just thinking about that, and like, but you used a point of like boxing at that time had a host of different different weights, which then brought boxers from all across the world into boxing.
Mm-hmm.
Because you had some boxers that were smaller, you had folks from South America that were fighting, you had folks from Europe, right? Like you had folks from Asia, you had folks from everywhere, which I think is kind of one part of that UFC culture you're talking about.
Yeah, yeah, and which is cool.
Um,
Which is I
yeah,
think
which is
a cool
cool that you
aspect
actually
of it
have
is
that,
because you
right?
really
Like,
do have an international, you know what I'm saying, presence in that.
because everybody can see themselves in it, which everyone saw themselves in that earlier boxing. But to your point, coming from, you know, the George Foreman's and then going into coming to the 80s, the Leon Spinks, the Tysons, the all the Trevor Burbick, and all everything leading into Tyson. So that's one thing to just, I think, put a pin in. Two, really quick, is sports as spectacle. And that's another thing when you just were talking about it, like this idea of sports as spectacle, where I think Tyson came about during the beginning of sports as spectacle.
Mm-hmm.
Now you can also say the Thriller, Thriller Manila was something when Joe Frazier and Ali fought in Africa, but you were still watching pound for pound like the best boxers, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
with Mike Tyson and pay-per-view that you so aptly talked about having its origin story, um, the importance of thinking of sports as spectacle, and when sports no longer, when you bring in Jake Paul, that's no longer about like actually watching people at the top of their talent, because that's not what that was about,
Yeah.
right? Even if you say UFC, and I mean those are people who are the best in fighting in that manner in the world, right? This was just some shit. Which then goes on to my point that I've been thinking about as I watched it, and thinking about people like, the Tyson fight's coming on. And when you say that, if you're of a certain age and background and experience, you think about all that represented to you. The zeitgeist of Mike Tyson, hip hop, and the assertion and the ascension of like Black culture.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And this idea of raw Black culture asserting itself, Michael Jordan dunking, um, Mike Tyson fighting, Public Enemy rapping, Rakim, like all this was like part of this really raw culture of music that had not been totally commodified, of a boxing kind of person, the likes of which you had never kind of seen, that totally represented the era in which he was from, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Which was so powerful that it's a zeitgeist for us of a certain generation. And then I started to think about, this idea of nostalgia. And, one of my favorite movies, you really can't say it, but I say it because it's relevant to this conversation, is Midnight in Paris, by Woody Allen.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't condone none of Woody Allen's personal behavior.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But there are artists sometimes that, listen, I don't condone most of artists' behavior. So I don't want to get into that, but I'm just saying for the context of this, right?
Yes, sir, I got you.
But one of the things that Woody Allen talks about in the movie is the decaying and like dangerous, insidious idea of nostalgia. In the movie, there's an artist and he's like, yeah, I would love to go back to the 60s, right? And then he gets back to the 60s. And when he's in the 60s, like, we would love to go back to the 40s.
Mm-hmm.
And then they go back to the 40s. Then in the 40s, they're like, man, the 20s was an amazing time, right? And so you start to realize that what you're looking for, you never find.
Mm-hmm.
And people are always looking back.
Yeah.
And so the Tyson fight and the idea, of us wanting to watch and even spending time watching a 58-year-old man fight.
Yeah.
Because of the power that it had over us. And at some point, we still wanted Mike Tyson to win, right? We wanted to see him be like, defy life, right? We wanted to see him defy all things and like come through and become the Mike Tyson of our past. And I want to just touch on this real quick. Mike Tyson stopped being the Tyson you thought about in 1990.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Tyson was never quite the person he was before 1990.
Yeah.
Jail, money stuff. He bites Vander Holyfield's ear, right? The tune-up fights that Mike Tyson had in 90, in 95, and 96 were not like good fights.
Yeah.
He just beat people up, right?
Yeah.
So I'm saying I had to dig like, yo, the Tyson I'm thinking about is literally 35, 36 years ago. I mean, that's the thing I'm talking about. The thing I'm thinking about is 1986, 1987, 1988, 1989. And so like the dangerous concept and what does it start to represent when like we're waiting for the zeitgeist of something to return to us instead of acknowledging that that thing has passed. And it being the most highest grossing pay-per-view fight of all time is another goes back to the sports as spectacle. And I just want us to think through that because I think we see it in so many parts of popular culture. In America, we see this. I mean, we're living through a time where a subset of thinkers has infiltrated one party. And it's not a value judgment. I think all the writers are now just being honest about this. There's the idea of the MAGA party has acted and hoisted itself upon the Republican Party as host of its ideas.
Mm-hmm.
But the MAGA party thing is not exclusively what you would call traditional Republican ideas. So that's not like a thing that I'm putting it down, just recognizing what it is. It's a mismatch of ideas that never would have neatly felt into the Republican Party of even 8 years ago.
Yeah.
So when we're thinking about this, there's this constant idea of nostalgia. And I just wanted to say that I think, when we're trying to bring back so much with our favorite rappers, our favorite artists, our favorite this, and how much are we giving to the credence of always paying homage to the past, but not letting our love with a past that was amazing, but also had its own challenges.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's easy to think of 1988, 1989 of all the good stuff. Sometimes we don't think of all the stuff that was actually happening during that time.
Yeah.
In post-industrial Black America that had its own challenges. And just like, so when we were talking, I just really thought about like, that's the biggest thing I took from the fight. Like, wow, how much have we invested in nostalgia, even if the nostalgia in no way matches our reality?
Yeah. I like that because it's like, I mean, it's like there's a metaphor there of like Tyson's gonna come. I mean, and obviously there were plenty of right there on the surface jokes and memes that folks made, like given the timing of the election and making, broad jumps and assumptions about where people land in their allegiances in terms of victories. That basically like, yeah, we can't have this, after the sister lost, you know what I'm saying, lost the election, and it's just, basically, I've seen it like, my childhood's going to be destroyed and all these other things. And the in boxing and in boxing is a sport where always, our subsurface, not always subsurface, but our subsurface, context in terms of, what race means and race dynamics in our world are always there. Jake Paul knows this because he almost exclusively fights black people. I don't know, besides Tyson Fury's your little brother, I don't know nobody that was not black that he has fought. Right. And as a white dude that's trying to at least assert that he's legitimately trying to become a professional boxer who seems to only fight black dudes in spectacle events. It's like, come on, dog. Like, we all know what this is, right? This is right. And I'll say it for folks that maybe might be not picking it up. Our operational notion within society that like white people can't fight, black people are tougher just by some magical nature, and therefore, him asserting his type of manliness is proving something, and it means something apparently to his fans and his audience. So there's that problematic dynamic here. But the other thing, again, like I said, centering on us is, and that bothered me most about it before I get to just sharing my overall disgust, is the amount of folks who I felt were like really almost trying to tune into this as serious. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like, this dude's not a real boxer. Like, and I say that in the guise of this. If I go train, so I've, as a person who has, years of martial arts practice and training, not in a tip top shape at the moment. I have the historical record, the document that I have trained at least 3 different martial arts disciplines in some structured way. Right.
And that you were cold kicking ass.
That's right. That's right, baby. You know what I'm saying? And although in none of those arts did I train at the level that like one of our brothers did, where I would have said would be ready to enter competitive, prize fighting, right? Because I didn't train to that level. I trained like as a practitioner and a person that moves in the world, and not to say that I wasn't good. Wasn't good at different peaks, and that I'm not, you find out the hard way right now. You know what I'm saying? You want to mix it up. You know what I mean? You want to mix it up with the boy. Nah, we don't. I'm too old to get in street fights. I'm just putting it out there. You know what I mean? There's somebody listening. I'm gonna go run up on Justice. Like, settle down, man. I'm gonna kick you in the knee and call the police. This man is trying to assault me. Arrest him.
But you gonna kick him first?
Oh yeah, I gotta get safe. I gotta get the safety. You know what I'm saying? I'm kick him in the knee, and I'm gonna get the safety. You know what I'm saying? Kick the knee, then run. That's what you do when you. Anyway, situational awareness. So you get to the place where, hey man, if to him and his self-development journey, right? If he's trying to be motivational to his folks and the people that listen to his whatever he be talking about, that's cool. You want to pick up a martial art and train hard, and they're like, hey man, I might actually feel like I'm, now, kind of late in the game for someone to become a professional boxer, already being somewhere over 20. At least and if I got the wrong ages, my bad. You know what I'm saying? Whatever. But it's like we wouldn't even be watching this if you didn't have the fan base and the money to put your own fights on. Like, no one would come to see this. No one would be like, oh yeah, like without you actually like engaging in the overall boxing apparatus. And I know the overall boxing apparatus is a wild, wacky place in this day and time that is probably as, not that it's how you say, not a legitimate operation itself. But to get to this place where I'm reading V, not telling people, I'm like, yo, I'm not watching a minute of this. And they're like, oh, why wouldn't you? I'm like, why would I watch this? Like, this isn't real. Like, Mike's 58 years old, B. as much as I wouldn't pick a fight with Mike Tyson at any time, I don't care how old he is because he still got all that boxing in him, right? Like
Right. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, but it's also he's 58. Like even when you're in great shape, when you right now, like I said, I'm not in great shape. I'm decent. I can walk. I can stay, keep around there. But if I had to go 3 minute rounds just working the bag, I'd be sweating. Man, I'd be chest pounding. Whew. By the end of that first 3 minutes, it'd be like, man, I gotta take a little bit off this jab.
Right. Right.
By the
No, that's
second
real.
3 minutes, I'd be like, can I just hug the bag and lean in a little bit? It's hard, man. It is hard to fight, even 2 minute rounds. It's hard. Go right now, get you a little clock, put it on 2 minutes, and keep doing something constantly for the whole 2 minutes. Then
Right.
yeah, somebody like try to hit you with a foam noodle or something. It'll make you tired. It's very difficult to do. It's incredibly difficult. So you start looking at the details, and then again, the assumption that we're seeing the same Mike Tyson, that time has not happened, nothing is different, or that at any moment the Mike Tyson that was it, he knocked Michael Spinks out in
Right.
less than a minute, 25 seconds or whatever. That Mike been gone, and you shouldn't think that person is still going to show up in the ring. That's ridiculous, right? It feels good though, because we want something to happen because we want it to happen. But then we're sending out someone who is no longer qualified to like win that fight. Like I'm sure there is a person Jake Paul's age that boxes that could give him, a more legitimate fight. And
Right. That's fair.
the challenge is there's no person because, like I said, he pretty much exclusively fights black dudes, from what I could tell. And somebody else can inform me if there was a current, black heavyweight champion of the world that would no one that person wouldn't fight Jake Paul
But
because
see that, and that's the spectacle, though, right? Like
yeah
the spectacle is why would someone at the top of their game even fight him, right? And which starts to knock down the perspective of how we even judge what does it mean to be at top of your game,
yeah
right? Like there's nothing else in boxing we would even entertain this concept.
yeah
You would not entertain it in basketball. You would not entertain it in in anything else. You're not entertaining it in soccer. You wouldn't say like when Diego Maradona was alive that he was going to like go toe to toe with you know Harry Kane from England or one of the best footballers, Vinicius, right? Like you just wouldn't say that. It would be foolish to have the conversation. And so, but then to say, well, this person who doesn't do the thing well, but can pay for it to do it, right? It's almost like the whole like when people start putting music out and they start putting it out because they could put it out versus
right
there's an A&R and for all the knocking that we can have of the system of A&Rs and music culture, there were people who saw talent and nurtured talent
yeah yeah
versus a person who could, I heard your music because you had enough to have me hear it. Now that's not knocking the Master P's and the Southern culture. So I don't want this to come off as a veiled reference to Southern hip hop culture, right?
oh yeah.
Um, but like there's a difference when there is a nurturing system. And I think and with all the disruption in our society around sports and streaming and things getting to you, right? We've totally cut out the middleman. And while I think in some ways it was good to cut out the middleman, this is an example of cutting out the middle person actually provides you a substandard product.
Yeah. And this is where I'll get to my just rank discuss with the whole thing. Because again, and I hope folks have seen the foothold. So you have essentially this person that does box and trains and trains and gets ready for these fights and does all the stuff. But ultimately, the platform exists because of their fame in just sort of within current entertainment. this is not a person who is, and I'm gonna say it the way I've been saying it. It's not fighting for his life. Meaning, boxing does not represent. At some point in their journey, said this is a way that I can build something for myself. I love the sport so much, and I'm so dedicated to the craft of it that I want to be the best at it, regardless
Right.
of who or what. I want to take all comers, and I'm I'm training with big bales of hay and running up mountains and all the all the mythos, right? I Then again, I primarily seem to pick black dudes, former athletes, and then now that some older boxers have been willing, old boxers, aging boxers have been willing to take my offer and fight me because I can get it sanctioned somewhere. And again, because someone will watch that it's good. Now, let me take you a step deeper. So that day, I was getting my hair twisted at shop, and they was running I guess the Netflix show that was building up to the thing. And they produced the show the same way, like some of those, like the Showtime show that they used to do, like the building up to the fight, and some of the other. So it had all the trappings of the like. This is what's his name? We at his gym in Arkansas, and like the guys in the gym like running on the grass, and my mom lost her leg in a car accident. You know what I'm saying? And like the whatever, like all the stuff, the beats of like the media that we've known over the last 30 years around fighting, around boxing, really last 40 years. But especially
Right.
got to the last 20 years, what was, I can't remember the name of the Showtime show, but it really made like boxes you ain't know nothing about. If you watch the show, you be kind of like, oh man, I'm invested. I want to see what's gonna
Right.
happen with these guys. You know what
Right.
I'm saying? It had I guess the dude, I think it was like his manager, and he's like, yeah, people didn't believe in what Jake was doing, but I told Jake we could go to the top. And I'm looking at him like, you can't be serious, dog. Like you're doing all the beats of something that's authentic while giving me something that's not authentic. Because the only way I can look at this and think it is, now we get into the larger thing, like if any sport is real and all that kind of stuff, I'm gonna put that over there. But at least it's like at some point you can't cheat in the ring. Like you can't cheat the game in the game. It's my contention there. Oh, this sport, they're fixing it for this person or that person. Yes, sports can be influenced by external factors and what happens inside the ring or inside the field or behind the lines, between the lines. But ultimately, when the thing that we like about sports is when the two people or three people or the team versus team and they actually start running around, you can't fake it for long. Like either one team got, either you're faking it, like if you're a really bad team and like y'all don't want to be there, you start alligator arming and running a little, like a step shower, and it becomes wildly dangerous for everyone involved because
Right.
you have to, you got to play when you're in a game. Like you in boxing is especially in combat related sports. Even when we used to do many years ago when I would come from school, we used to do sparring days, and every once in a while we would do 2-on-2s, and it's sparring 2-on-1s rather, right? And see, we say like, hey, when it's a 2-on-1, the people that are that are being the pair, right, to help a person practice the idea of two people coming at you, you have to be particularly careful because the person that's the one, it's going to be hard to not throw a full power blow
Right.
because
Right.
you want to because if you've been training, you're gonna respond, right? Because that's
Right.
part of the training is you learn how to moderate your control and look out for your partner, but you can lose that in the context of practicing a 2-on-1 situation because
Right. That's true.
you're gonna slap one and you're gonna make the thing in your mind. It's like, and then you turn and you do this, and that second one might be a full throttle. You know what I mean? Gimme yam to the tender vittles, and it's not purposeful. It's that you're trusting your training, you're doing the thing that you're working on, right? And so all this put this all together, you're gonna put this fight on. It's a 58-year-old man fighting a 20-something, 27-year-old man, I believe. Which no matter how good a shape they're in, it's not gonna be the same. Because it's just not. My uncle, he's passed now, but he was Golden Gloves boxer, sparred, was referee for several decades. He sparred with the Spinks brothers. He he's trained boxing in the correctional facilities in I think in Trenton State, in Trenton and a couple other places. Like boxing is like, I got a picture with Mike Spinks, a champ from like when I'm a kid, because from my uncle. My uncle's like a real boxer. It's serious. Like people get hurt, you could die. Anytime someone gets knocked out, like I know in TV movies, people get knocked out, and then just 2 hours later they're up like, oh man, I got knocked out. Anytime you get knocked out, you could die. I think I've said this on the air before in a recording, but I just reiterate because we watch TV and we think people get knocked out and like you just always come back. Anytime you take any type of damage, neurological damage that leads to you losing consciousness, you may not be totally the same after. Right. So it's not something to me that is cool to be like, I'm going to watch it just because I want to see what's going to happen. Like, what if Mike died out that joint? What if Jake caught him with a straight one and Mike, like, straight up just died in the ring? Which is a totally possible thing to happen for a 58-year-old man fighting a 27-year-old. Even if he is Mike Tyson. Even if we're like, well, Mike done took so many blows, he'll probably be fine. Nah, man. Like, Mike has spent the last 10, 20, 15 years trying to tell us, like, not only do I have all sorts of ailments from being in the ring, I have all sorts of wild stuff that has a part of my life that I've been trying to heal from the whole time y'all have seen me. And I've done it all in public for decades.
And I do think it's in a strange way. It's a testament to how he was able to return to our collective consciousness in a way that he was not a broken man.
Yeah.
Which in some sense is like a testament to him that he got back to our kind of consciousness, and we were like, oh, still Mike. Mike is still Mike. Mike's still funny. Mike, does this or does that. And Mike still can train, right? So like, again, the nostalgia made us, what the kids say, delulu, right? The nostalgia made us delulu about like, listen, there's one guy out here who is defying time, and he spends millions of dollars on his body to defy time. And that's LeBron James.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and that's millions of dollars. Tom Brady spent millions of dollars on his body to defy time. And Tom Brady knew when it was time to wrap it up,
Right. Even Tom was like, you know what? I probably need to chill.
Yeah.
And I see it, that this is my take on Tom Brady. Is like, Tom was like, I think I could do this. And then he did it. Like, I think the back half of his whole career, those last couple Super Bowls, was like, Tom was like, I think I could pull this off. And then everyone around him kind of didn't step up. Like Aaron Rodgers has dodged that he should have won two Super Bowls at the end of his career in Green Bay, and we don't talk about it. We act like, oh, well, the receivers, and we make all these excuses. There's no excuse. Tom Brady said, oh, I'll take those. Let me get that. I'll take them championships. But even Tom got to the place with like, you know what? I squeezed out this one more playoff run, and I need to get the hell out of here. People keep saying he wants to keep playing, but he knows he got one more before he go out there, and we're gonna be like, oh man, Tom Brady got smashed in a game,
right?
And he's not moving,
right? Like again, this is with spending like a trainer of, some people would say
dubious. like avant-garde, cutting edge treatments.
Avant-garde, cutting edge trainer, like, you know what I mean? Like, that's him with him. LeBron James, takes the what's the name baths, is on a steps every day. Again, you'll never see a show like that again in your life, and that's millions of dollars to perform at the highest level. Mike's not spending $1 million on his body, and at 58, the what you're going to come out of it with is still questionable, right? Like at 58, the fact that you can move around and run a couple miles actually puts you probably in the top 2 to 5% of 58-year-olds anywhere in the world. Just the fact you can carry some of the basic stuff out. So really thinking about it is a testament to it, but that shouldn't make us the Lulu to the points that you're making, right? Like our nostalgia and what we're seeing shouldn't allow us to lie to ourselves. And I think you can extend that metaphor into so many things in current society.
Yeah. And just I'll hit it right on the head. It's also just not real. We should not watch this man. I know people, well, just entertainment. People, they could pick what they want. I'm gonna just let you all know. If you told me you paid for the Dave Robinson fight, like the first one, like, okay, maybe you was kicking it, having fun with your friends. Like, is this real? Let's watch one. Then Nate Robinson lost, and people were like, oh, that was ridiculous. And like, but after that, you shouldn't watch this if you really love boxing. To me, now people told me that the undercard was good with the two women, and there was some funny stuff with the scoring. To my understanding, again, I didn't watch a single minute of this foolishness, so I don't totally know exactly what happened. And I also did not. I've gone out of my way to not read any super detailed reporting. So all I got is what y'all have said in the various channels of engagement, not like you yourself, y'all, like the general people, y'all. But my largest social concern is too many of us will watch and engage in stuff that's like, this is really terrible and we shouldn't really engage in it. And we'll be like, but Justice, I mean, it might be fun, but Justice, it could be cool, but Justice, and I'll be like, okay. And then when it's disappointing, sad, depressing, it's like, oh man, I'm sad and depressed because I watched this thing. Or can you believe they made all that money? And it's like, yeah, because y'all watched it. We could watch some other stuff. there's something else. There could be something else over here we could have watched. Like, I don't understand why people can't just like say no to some of these things and just be like, nah, I'm not gonna participate in that. I don't care how much the rest of y'all about to do it. If that means I can't go to my favorite bar and get the 25-cent shrimps, you know what I'm saying? That means I can't go to shrimp night because I ain't watching it. And it that's what bothers me the most about it is the amount of folks that just are okay with like, it'll be fun. It's already going to be on the Netflix. I'm just going to leave it on. No, they got mad shows on Netflix. You can watch anything else. You don't have to watch it. You don't have to participate in this.
But see, I think that's the point
Yeah.
about sports is spectacle, right? Like at some point, it's no longer about the sport. And if you think about it, again, think about like Mr. T being on Rocky, right? Now, obviously, there's a movie that's not real, but like, or like the wrestling, boxing mashups from even our childhood, right? Yeah. Like kind of crazy shit, right? Like Andre the Giant doing this against somebody. So I think we've accepted a part of sports as spectacle and goofball stuff for some time. But like anything in a hypercharged environment, right? Now we get to see it differently. Now it's the most watched boxing match of all time. Right? So it's not just like oh, well, okay. It's like literally Netflix put it on, and to say nothing about, the capacity of Netflix to be able to actually make it so people could watch it, which is its own challenge. Which is saying something about like, okay, we're all moving to cutting the cord from, kind of cable as it were, but also what's to be gained and lost with that and the capacity therein. Because I'm sure in no time has all the people been watching Netflix as much as they were at that moment.
Yeah. Yeah. And just to be clear, I understand why Netflix would want to broadcast it. I understand how spectacle works. It's hard for me to ameliorate my feelings that even just people who I feel like should know better, like, yo, man, but don't watch it though. Like, don't I like know that it happened, but don't watch that. Like, I'd let it go. You know what I'm saying? I ain't mad at y'all. Y'all can still get some sandwiches later, next week or whatever. We can still hang out. You know what I mean? We still be friends. I just if you bring it up, or if you try to have serious analysis, I don't know what you think about Mike's uppercut. Like, man, he wasn't even. My understanding was he wasn't allowed to throw the Mike uppercut, which is ridiculous. It's Mike Tyson. How Mike not allowed to throw the uppercut?
Yeah.
Right? Like, what are we doing? Well, I'm not here for that. I'm here for Mike. If I'm gonna see Mike, I need to see Mike. If Mike's thing is you get all close, you get up in there, then he takes you to the next universe with that uppercut, and you realize maybe you shouldn't have been fighting. Maybe he was right about whatever he was thinking. Like maybe he had the right idea. I shouldn't have been, man. This is the most terrifying thing in boxing history. That damn uppercut. They're like, yeah, I don't gotta. Basically, I don't have to worry about the uppercut now as your opponent. It's like, come on, man. Respect the integrity of the sport. So anyway, so everybody, I don't know. I don't want to just drone on about it, but I'll say, to all of us, we need to accept the past is past, and let's make a bright and joyful future, man. Like, you know what I mean? And to my folks that's really into boxing, because there's a couple people that I know that they can name different fighters coming up at different weights, and oh, this guy looks good, and do. Hey man, we need y'all to help us. So the rest of us that ain't super in the mix, we could blow this thing up for those guys, so that we could stop watching Jake Paul fight people. You know what I'm saying? Because it'd be like, so and so is coming, like they're a real boxer, like he's coming, or she's over there, she about to knock somebody, fronts out. Boxing is so violent. Just in case everybody didn't know that's part of the fight. That's part of the
Yeah, that was hilarious at the to be here like, this is so damn violent.
I mean, it's a wild. It's no escaping it. Like the part of the sport is to like get the other person to submit by direct contact. Yeah.
Right, but not, but like different. But you know what is even different than the UFC, where it's like, I want you to submit because like slap your head down 3 times, let you know it hurts. It hurts too much for me to continue. Versus like, I really only win by literally knocking you down to the point where the referee looks at you and say that you cannot continue.
Right, like, we got to stop this. This is going too far. He's not going to.
Right, like that's really the only way. Every now and then, but most boxers are not being like, no mas, right? For the great Roberto Duran, like no one's doing that. Yeah. You've been beat into, some sort of Popeye or Tom and Jerry like stars going around your head, and that's when it ends.
Right.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, I'll just say this. I think to your point, the past is the past. Mike Tyson very well may have been one of the last from a Generation X perspective. But I think now, and I know we'll talk about this when we talk about the Kendrick album and related elements, I think successive generations are creating their own nostalgia that no longer is applicable. I actually think Lil Wayne is part of this new generation's nostalgia that like 17 years ago, he probably was the most consistent and best rapper on the planet, but that was 17 years ago.
Yeah.
And there's a set of people, right? If you say like 07 Wayne, right? Like, okay, yes, that was 07 Wayne. But that was 17 years ago. But if you still have the nostalgia that he's the best because that's what you heard, and sometimes by extension you think Drake's the best because Drake was put out by Lil Wayne, right? So there's a set of connections that you start drawing. I think that this generation's getting close to that. And then also, I mean, just with making the metaphor, I'll stop here, but like that's really the same thing a Generation X and a certain generation does with Jay-Z. Like, there's a reason Jay-Z puts out like 1 or 2 songs a year, if that. Because he cannot consistently put out music because he still does not have the lyrical dexterity of these other folks to put out music in that kind of context. That says nothing about what he has done. It just says what he can do today, right? And I think he's smart. He's in control. So if he puts out a 10-minute verse once every 2 years, Jay still got it.
Oh, Jay still, yeah. I mean,
and then Jay go back in the house like, okay, got that off of y'all. Now, now I can disappear. It ain't got to be seen for 2 years if I decide to rap again, right? And so I think there is something to know how do you age gracefully. Everybody's not LeBron, and in that sense, everyone's not Nas, right? Yeah. But anyway,
yeah. So on another note, before we let go, I wanted to share just and get your thought and perspective because what we do here is I mean, I think is a form of it's not as long as it could be, some subjects, but of longer form media, right? And content or discussions that we're not trying to like rush you through to a point, right? We're not anchoring the time we do sort of on this like notion of we got to hurry up and say it before get distracted by the squirrels or whatever, or like a meme. And so I was road tripping this week, and I guess helping move my son, and get in the car, and I had on an audio book, was listening to the what's my man Nexus, um, say his name while I got it, and then went from that audiobook because it was I was getting a little tired and it was a little bit too serious. Yuval Noah, Yuval Noah Harari,
Yeah.
yeah, he did Sapiens, and it was a little too intense for 11:30 at night on a highway and we're between Amarillo and Lubbock. You know what I'm saying? To be like, man, let me pivot over to a couple podcasts, and you had recently shared with me Acquired, which I wasn't on my radar, but is a very 3-4 hour per episode deep dive type of podcast. You have other stuff like I don't listen to Joe Rogan's show all the time, but Joe Rogan's show is like a 3 hour thing. What's the other cat? I mean, and I'm saying some of these just to the Joe Budden podcast is like 2.5, 3 hours sometimes. Usually now they're mostly like two. What's the other the brothers that do the shop like on the hip hop joint, and they be in
Yeah. You talking about man, boys from Brooklyn, Mecca and the old rapper boy. Yeah. My expert opinion is the name of the show.
There's a lot of these shows that are anchored on the idea that you will listen to a 2-3 hour conversation. Questlove Supreme, like almost all podcasts, like at least the ones that are not sort of like Ezra Klein is like you get in and out in an hour. Some of the ones that are produced by bigger companies are very like, yeah, we getting in and out of this thing in less than 90 minutes at the most. But there's a whole lot of this stuff, and there's a lot of listening, learning, and engaging that actually is still rooted in the idea that like if something is interesting, you'll listen to it for a long time or you'll read it all the way through. It's like when you get into an interesting, book on a topic and you'll just like, oh man, I gotta keep going. You know what I mean? I've brought up the Power Broker, which is probably definitely on the high end of like super long books. But I've also in the last 3 months been listening to the 99% Invisible review and reread, like going through the Power Broker in like these 3 hour episodes. And I might be in the minority, but it speaks to something to me like that there's a place for long form media, right? Reading things that you need to read and sit with for a little while, things that you need to listen to. And that goes counter to sort of the notion that like we as humans have completely lost the capacity to like hold attention. Which I understand the larger day-to-day concern about that. I'm not saying that there's nothing there. But I'm also saying simultaneously, we got all this stuff that's like, we were riding and listening, we were in the car and my partner, my beloved person, she was using the other seat, tuning in and out because, getting some sleep while we're driving and like, wait a minute, we still in the same? I'm like, wow, but like, it wasn't like, oh, turn off this crazy long conversation. You know what I mean? It was like, oh, I jumped out, then I jumped back in, and then it was like, nah, I want to see where this goes. I want to get to the end. And I just think that there's, I think it's a curious and interesting thing. So I was interested in your thoughts on like longer form content and pieces.
Yeah, man. I think for me, the first kind of exposure to, I have a couple of thoughts, just playing off of some of the things that you shared. I got kind of exposed to it. I would say there's a podcast called Invest Like the Best. And he does like these long form interviews with like just people who've made a lot of money in either the investing space, financial services, different things. And increasingly like kind of like in sports and culture. There's actually a pretty good one with Shane Battier talking about the role of teammates and how Shane Battier has been fortunate to be on multiple championship teams and have won championships at like all levels. And what is the role and importance of, what they call the glue guys, the people that keep the team going, right? They're not the highest scorer. They're the person that knows that when they make a little shift, they can shift what the team gets and stuff like that. And, so kind of what do those things mean? Also Daryl Hinkie, and not Sam Hinkie. And Sam Hinkie, just for people for context, was the kind of architect of the of the Philadelphia 76ers term, the process, that basically came from investing in the mindset of investing. So all that looks really crazy right now to be true. However, the whole Sixer thing looks crazy. Yeah, the process looks like
detrimental for everybody.
Yeah, it doesn't look good, but we'll see. But anyway, like that's when I got exposed, and I started to realize like the idea of like now you can just run and listen to an entire interview, and like the power of that idea, right? Like I could spend time on the road and like really hear an entire thing. Sometimes I would stop to take notes, right? Because sometimes people say stuff, you're like, wow, I really need to think about that, right? You take some notes, but I think, one of my number one point is your thing. We've been talking about the attention span, whether it's these or the other parts of what I look at as long form content and around the relationship podcasts now, right? They get broken into small pieces, but them shows are usually 2 hours.
Yeah.
So we have this world that's saying people don't pay attention, but yet Joe Rogan's on for 4 hours. And if you do put any credence, as I do, but if you put credence in the Trump campaign's embrace of podcast bros as part of it and part of what people thought is the humanization of Donald Trump, when they listened to him talk about his family and brothers differently than what they thought about when some of the more repugnant things that he has said, right? So there's something there that clearly even the youngest generation of folk who we say can't pay attention to anything are clearly paying attention. And I think that should allow us to stop with that assumption that it's more about the quality of the content than the extent of time of the content.
Yeah.
So the challenge is not how long is it. The challenge is what are you talking about? And another piece of it, which I know is part of this conversation we're having, is about acquired, right? And so for folks listening, I actually would say, it's a really interesting podcast to listen to because it's kind of one of those, like, you think you know about a company, but you don't really. Like, what you think you know about stuff, you're like, oh yeah, this company did this or this company did that, and it's like, well, you have no idea why. Right. I just use an example. How would I learn that the company Nintendo started from a gambling company in Japan? Right. Like, and what you think of Nintendo, when all we think about it in America, that it had its origin there. And Duck Hunt had its origin in like bar games in Tokyo. Right. And so to me, like, why is that important? Or Porsche, that, Porsche and Volkswagen even more so, had a very explicit relationship with the Third Reich. And these things are important because in the absence in many of our schools and locations around like getting deep information and deep dives, what happens is we know what we think about a whole bunch of stuff versus actually the information. So I think that long form content becomes that much more important in that sense.
Yeah.
of being able to go through it. I mean, acquired like literally the Hermes in the Hermes edition, or one that they did recently. I mean, it took a year to research it
Yeah.
because they had to give it its just due, right? And again, we have a world where people just say things now and they talk about things that actually they haven't researched. So it ends up being tough. There's a being like one thing where we see people are actually taking the time to do the research. And I think it's really good that we're getting to see whether it starts at Rogan and goes somewhere else, or starts at Acquired, or starts at, My Expert Opinion, or starts at Joe Budden, right? Actually, the one with Dr. Umar was on Joe Budden.
Oh, I know. I got it. I've been doing. I got it
Oh
so I can
man.
finish watching it because I was like, I know. I'm sure there's some incendiary and entertaining and wild.
God, it's exactly what we talked about with his shows when he was on the Breakfast Club. It's just like that.
Yeah.
It's some stuff that he will say that actually will be like, yo, that is actually very true. And then this is some shit he'll say, like the snow bunny crisis and all that.
Got to get these carpets from the brother from Trenton. You know what I'm saying? Like,
But the brother gonna come. The brother gonna come up. Shout out to the brother and the good sister. They gonna come up, put these,
get a
put
good
these
price.
carpets
Get a good
in.
price on these carpets. You know what I'm saying? It's like it gets me to the place of like, and even and Shab, thank you because I mentioned Acquired, but didn't mention Acquired. The joy in listening, one actually like getting information that like is rooted, like is detailed and specific, and like really gives you a full picture is refreshing. Like we all like folks, it is more enjoyable to like actually get a story about something than to get the like, it's easy to go like, yeah, all these companies was doing this with the Third Reich, right? It's much more, which I thought was remarkable about the IKEA drawing, like to hear the internal like what existing in pre-World War One Europe, turn of the fall of the last the Russian Bolshevik Revolution, and then like being
Right.
in World War II, and then existing in the post World War II world as a business. You, like, what does that mean though in detail? Because it's easy to go like, yeah, they did something with like, and for us to decide like, yes, it's bad to have been a part of the Third Reich. Like, I don't think anybody questions at least anyone reasonable questions that. But the thing to understand is that, if you watch something like Exterminate All the Brutes and understand that everything that has happened in the last 100 years with humans, on the other side of the full outbreak of the Industrial Revolution means that how all of the industrial capacity that we have also contributes to the level of industrial violence that we're able to portray upon each other. Right? There's a direct relationship between these things. Understanding society and in the world with more detail around something where it's like, yeah, you be like, it's easy to write a think piece where you're like railing against corporate greed or whatever, which might be good for the energy of you getting that off your chest if that's how you feel. But in terms of doing something different, we got to talk about it. We got to like get into the weeds and the details of how we're gonna not
Right.
a thing that maybe we do or don't agree with. Also, there is something remarkable to, in our age of the amount of folks, like, you got to get out there and do your own research, which, for a lot of folks means I need to find 2 or 3 videos or a couple of articles that make me feel comfortable agreeing with the thing I already think. And when you read something,
Absolutely.
you know what I'm saying, right? You read something that makes you sit with it. It doesn't mean that you now maybe change your perspective overall, right? But you might have some deeper understanding about your perspective, but also what was happening with this subject matter or this paper. And in this context, talking about companies with acquired, but in other, spaces of learning, and to your point around Trump being on the podcast, a good example, folks in the last 2 years talk about. I didn't, again, this is something I didn't watch a minute of just because I enjoy football, but I don't need to watch this much. But like the NFL, the show, Netflix show, like Quarterback, and
Yeah.
Seeing more of the overall person of Kirk Cousins, like it created an immediate shift in the way even talking head media type folks talked about Kirk Cousins, because you saw more of them as a human. And it's at the root of what always has been at the root of like who we do and don't see in broader media, how people are portrayed. That if you spend more time seeing these people, it's hard to not see them as humans in a full sense, right? And so now there ain't enough TV show ever for me to ever rock with Donald Trump. Just keep it a buck for everybody listening, right? Because back from his root, I could tell I know a con man when I see one, so I'm not rocking with Bull. However, that's how I see it, right? And for those some people, there ain't enough. They would have to see Donald Trump like doing the most despicable thing, like with a live feed with somebody with like the today's copy of the New York Times and like Joe Rogan standing there shocked and amazed too before they would go, oh wow, he really did that.
Right.
Oh man, he might have had a lot going on that day, because what we think about people sometimes is again, it's always as much about us as it is them. And it's just like,
absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? Right. And like, that's my guy and you can't move me off it, Justice. So, which I'm not trying to. I just don't.
I mean, it goes to teams, right? Like, I think to your point, like we've created, again, if you look at current culture, we're on team this, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like, okay, you're on a team.
Yeah, that's your spot. That's who you with.
Yeah, that's who you with. So it's like it gets difficult to like be like, oh, I'm not going to be over there. And in the idea, to your point, if you're predisposed to a set of things, and you can then see someone's humanity within that predisposed set of ideas anyway, then you're there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But and so I guess for me, it brings up this idea of the civic commons, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now they're still way too isolated of civic commons.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're kind of like pockets of a commons. So it's almost like, if you think of it, it's like almost like a European style situation where it's like a really big center of the city, but it's like 6 different conversations going on. But all of them have people over there.
Yeah. It's like it's different cafes with little, you know what I mean? And some people got cups,
all
some people got little cups.
Different conversations. We ain't got to one conversation yet, but I do think the idea of long form media gives a chance to have a set of dialogues and a set of conversations that help people kind of at least get this out, because like we've talked about, and I do think it's so much to it when even you think about like the barbershop, right? And how even then now the barbershop is as such where you get a appointment, right? Which means if your barber is actually on point that day and not 15 minutes late, shout out to the barbers. The barbershop's like the butterfly effect. One late person changes everything in the barbershop.
Yeah.
Because now everyone's 15 minutes late because one person was 15 minutes late getting their haircut. But like, let's assume that there's no butterfly effect that day. If my appointment is 6 o'clock, I come in at 6 o'clock, get my haircut, and I'm gone. I don't sit at the barbershop, right? And so even with the power of the barbershop, if you're really just that in and out, what happens often is you're not part of the commons.
Yeah.
So I think that this long form, at least as a way of sparking conversation and then having kind of related forms of long form media, or for yourself, different ones that you listen to, are just really important to be more thorough with ideas.
Yeah.
And
I think it's, and I just think it's, just to make sure, and my hope and my intent in bringing this up was to have a positive note that, like, I think there's still space for deep thought and like listening and going along. I just think the way, I question the idea of however we presumed that sort of activity happened in the past, that maybe it was not happening in the way that we think it was happening. I mean, I'm sure for some folks who consider themselves more academic, like I think a previous generation of sort of like, I'm like a serious, academic person. I go to like talks and presentations, and like, historian does a 2-hour thing. I'm going to the so and so exhibition, right? Or you watched PBS, you know what I'm saying? And so you watch mad documentaries, or like I did, because that was the channel that always came in clear. So if all the other channels wasn't working on a Saturday, you were definitely going to learn how to cook, and maybe, learn something about some, ancient civilization or something, because that channel came in.
Right? You absolutely were. Because Channel 12 gonna come through. If the
Right.
rest of them don't.
Some days other channels, I don't know how the antennas work, but you know what I'm saying? Channel 12 right there, strong signal. So you popping it on and frugal gourmeting, you know what I'm saying? And then I might learn something about, how sarsaparilla is made or whatever, or birch beer, right? Like these are, and so in our time, there's, I would like to see, and I encourage people to like engage with something that takes some time to get through, right? Like, listening is a great way to go. The feedback I've got from people, and even, just even monitoring on YouTube, like what other stuff people watch. Like, this stuff, there's a lot of stuff that's long that clearly, at least a couple thousand people watch, because you go, they're like, 200,000, views. You know what I mean? I don't know. I'm sure there's some bots and robots and some other stuff in there, and aggregators or whatever else. But there's also like people will click on something, tune it in, and they like, cleaning the kitchen or making food or doing whatever else they do. I'm sure that there's some kind of crossover with video game playing and like playing something long form. Because at least I'll speak for myself. When I do have time to play, it is a good time to put on something that I can, listen to the whole, while I'm also, doing space exploring or whatever it is I'm doing on the video game, right? And it is I think it's an opportunity for folks to be conscientious of, especially to the amount of folks in this last few weeks of, I would say, some level of cultural dismay. They go like, hey man, maybe like, instead of y'all trying to convince me about all these fantastical origins of Black folks in the Americas, maybe not just any long video, because I know there's a lot of long videos that are terrible. But like, you know what I mean, get you and all your buddies with your little books, and y'all put on a 3-4 hour joint and convince me this stuff y'all talk about is true. I'm promise I'm gonna listen to it, but I'll give you a shot. I'll give you about a good 15 minutes to bring me in. You know what I mean? Like, this is, I think humans still want to learn. I guess that's where I'm going. And I just want to say, with love and care, humans still want to learn. So, make it open the door. Let them learn. All right, there. Justice was positive. I did it.
You did it, man. You did it. We did it, Joe.
We did it.
We did it, Just. We did it.
Yo, Just. Yo, hold up, man. Oh, man, Shark. I miss him. All right. So that, I don't know. That's all I had for the good order.
No, I think that's a great way to, and folks, just, as you listen, to your point, just like people do want to, and be willing and open to listen to things that might go a little longer than what we have been told is most efficient.
Yeah.
Right? Because everything efficient isn't the best for us either. Like, in a time where, again, things have been disrupted, don't assume that there is still some wisdom in the process of long form deep learning, that it's not like a played out concept.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that, I'll say peace.
Peace.
Thank you for listening to Good Brothers. Thank you to my good brother, Majestic. Good Brothers is part of the Ask Your Oldhead podcast and other creative ventures soon to come from yours truly. So I'm going to just let you know what to do. Look, search, subscribe, you know what I'm saying? Share with a friend, rate, subscribe, search for me on Patreon, become a patron, all the things, all the stuff. Man, just enjoy, and please stay tuned for what comes next. Peace.